Hi, a very good morning to you. It's Jim from Maverickstar Observatory. As you've probably gathered from the title of this video that we're uploading on YouTube later on, we've been demonetised for talking about issues relating to climate change. Apparently, I've been considered a climate change denier for the fact that I have an alternative opinion on what is the status quo of what the mainstream governments around the world are putting out, and obviously now mainstream media are supporting, and companies like Google are now enforcing penalties on people with alternative views. But I think it does go to some degree to infringe on certain legal rights that I have, which I will show you shortly on in this video. But let's just look at this, what has happened here. You know, I've studied science, natural sciences, and according to my academic transcript, I am qualified to talk on these issues. I am legally within my rights to have opinions, regardless of what they are. And as a result of that, I have been, in my view, penalised for my opinions, and even victimised for my opinions. And I say victimisation because I have now had monies removed for my opinions, and I do feel that that this is something that should be challenged with Google. And I feel it does warrant even writing a letter to the government. I know what you're thinking, you're probably wasting your time, Gene, but what do we do from this point on out? Do we not show them that there is any resilience to this? Do we allow them to carry on? Because if we do, what happens when they take it the next step further? And I can guarantee you that will be the case. We have historical facts in history that show you what happens next. I've told you guys this time and time before. We have witnessed the burning of literature, which is the burning of information, which the human rights was set up to protect, ever from happening again. And we are seeing this Nazism return, and it should send shivers literally down your spine, because they are going after academically, professional people now that are qualified in the field to talk about such matters as climate, and penalising them for their alternative views. And I think that in the recent videos that I've done, more than justifies a reapproach to their thinking and conclusions based on science and climate. They are saying that there is no more need for a debate, because it is a well-established science fact that climate change is a direct result of carbon dioxide going into the atmosphere. I think that we've supported evidence over the last few days to rebut that claim quite clearly. And we have seen, I can't mention his name, but he's very famous for inventing the climate map, or the climate chart that they show to prove their point. But like I've pointed out in the videos previously, that if you're going to look at temperature increases from 1880 upwards, it will show that temperature is rising. But if you go back into the history of our Earth, you'll see that it has did this 4 or 5 times in the last 400,000 years, and that every time it has risen, CO2 has risen equally along with it. What is happening right now is they are trying to raise over $100 trillion. And I have no idea what they intend to do with this money, because it will be impossible for them to try and reduce CO2 out of the atmosphere. Yes, you may be able to curb a very minuscule amount by, switching from combustion cars to electric vehicles. But what will be the impacts on the environment for doing that? And is this sustainable? The point is that science has always encouraged alternative views to test that theory. And when you no longer are in that arena of allowing alternative views, then you are dictating to everybody what your opinion is, and any other professional opinion from that point on no longer matters. The money is not important that we raise from the adverts, but it is the principle. And I'll show you that what they have done is definitely infringe upon my human rights along the Article 10 of the Human Rights Act. I'll show you that. I don't think that there is any coincidence that within the last 24 hours of me trying to improve a chart so that people can understand fully what is happening with our world and its climate, that we get our adverts and the small amount of funds that we raise from that removed from the channel. But who are Google to infringe on people's human rights? Who are Google to say what is and what is not acceptable with regards to opinions on any subject, even regardless of, what that subject is? Who has given them that authority? And who is allowing them to keep that authority? Do we have governments anymore? Is Google more powerful than any government in our world right now? Is the internet, a new world order that has been established? And soon we will all very much realise that there are no longer any borders. There is just the internet. Life, for a lot of us, revolves around the internet. And there are 3 companies, as far as I'm aware, that hold the majority of those server stations which the internet relies upon. And if you Google or do a YouTube search on who those 3 companies are, you're going to come across Google, Microsoft, and there is another one as well. And the history stems, I believe, from DARPA in the 1960s. I'm not going to go too much into detail with that, but I just want to show you guys what has actually happened, and as always, present the facts. Can you believe that we live in a day and age where somebody has, studied a subject in science and no longer has is able to have an opinion on a scientific matter, such as climate, especially when that science and the academic transcript states I'm fully qualified to talk about that? This is the day and age that we live in, and we shouldn't accept it at all. Before we look at a few things I want to show you, I want to just say a big thanks to those few people that have supported us yesterday with some funding. And now more than ever we're going to need to be supported, and you should support the channel, because they are trying to stamp out more than ever now anyone with an alternative view as to what is causing climate change. Now, I am not denying climate change. I am completely acceptive of the fact that we have got a climate disorder, which probably has stemmed from the last 30 years as far as I'm concerned, because the data as I've presented with the magnetic pole reversal fits the rapid acceleration of the magnetic north pole migrating, along with the decline in standard and current weather patterns on this earth. They have definitely changed, but it is not because of the reasons that these people are saying. It's got nothing to do with the Industrial Revolution, and I'll put a link down there to the video I put on yesterday, and you'll see it's got nothing to do with that. It goes back a lot further, 12,000 years, 15,000 years. We have maintained an average temperature over that period of time, and it is unusual from the past cycles. We don't know why that is, but we could, if we had the money, investigate this anomaly that has changed in the cycles over the last 400,000 years. It certainly began well before the Industrial Revolution, and this is where they base their argument from. the 1800s. And of course, I've showed you the charts of temperature from the 1800s which show an incline in temperature. But then, why have they omitted the medieval warm period out of their research, which is only in the last 15,000 years? What was it that brought us into a warmer climate that allowed us to migrate out of a glacial period? And what was it that did that, six or so times in the last 400,000 years? Because I will just say this: we wasn't even here 45,000 years ago. So how could we have possibly modified the climate over the last 400,000 years? I want to show you exactly what has happened today and exactly what they have did to our freedoms. It's not just mine, it's yours as well, because you have a freedom just as much as I do to access information from whatever source you choose to. It's entirely up to you. Just want to briefly mention that there is a link down there and you can help support us. I'm hoping that more of you will start to realise the severeness of this situation now that we are facing. And I will say this, that we will now take measures to have alternative platforms where we can move to, but it could be the same case in the short-term future wherever we try and broadcast the truth from. These modern day Nazis are going to come along, and you should realise that it wasn't shortly after burning all the literature back in only not less than 90 years ago that it wasn't long before they started burning bodies. Now, £100 trillion is one hell of a lot of money. I don't think most of you realise exactly how much that is. But I want to ask you something. Who can bear the brunt of raising this money right now? Because they are going to come to us for it. And what they can do with this money is nothing. Zero. They can't stop what has already happened. Nature will manage it in her own way, just as she has done for the last 400,000 years. What they've done is give no credit to nature whatsoever. They have totally omitted all the correct information from their charts. This guy who has created this chart, you can research him. I can't even say his name. Can you believe that? We live in this time where we can't, or we are worried for further victimization and persecution. We cannot mention the people that produce these charts. You can research it though. Anyhow, let me show you something. So, just to present the facts so that you guys know that I'm not just saying this. This is what we woke up to this morning when we was checking and reading the comments on the channel. As you can see, your channel is no longer eligible for monetization. What should you do next? Review our feedback. Basically, they're saying that it's because of harmful content, that the content that focuses on controversial issues, it must be with the fact that we are talking about climate and having an alternative opinion on that. I'll just say now that we don't deny climate change, never have done, but that doesn't make any difference, because they have made it clear that if you are talking about climate and do not accept the findings of other scientists as to the reasons of why the climate has changed, then that will be enough for you to lose your rights to be monetised. But basically, let's just look at it in a nutshell. What are they actually doing? Well, they're restricting my freedom of rights to have thoughts and opinions and to express them. This is the advert which is telling people that Google bans ads that spread climate misinformation. So it's no longer whether you're a climate denier, it's just if they feel that you're spreading misinformation. I'll just read here. The Google Ads team announced yesterday it will prohibit ads for and monetization of content that contradicts well-established scientific consensus around the existence and cause of climate change. The policy changes apply to Google advertisements, publishers that run Google Ads, and YouTube creators. So you can see that I have definitely been targeted by Google and by YouTube for having an alternative view on science. And that is even if my view comes from a solid background in science and I'm qualified to talk about these issues. What does that tell you guys? But here's why I feel they have overstepped the line and that something really should be done about this. And this is where I believe they've overstepped the line and behaved illegally with their actions. And the reason why I say that is because I'm supposed to have human rights that protect me. That is the legislation of the UK government. And, I should be protected, especially if, there are laws that say I have the rights to protection in certain circumstances. And if we go down to Article 10 of the Human Rights Act, you will see what I'm talking about. And here it is, freedom of expression. Everyone has the right to freedom of expression. This right shall include freedom to hold opinions and to receive and impart information and ideas without interference by public authority. And I do believe that also extends to anybody else that infringes upon my human rights, as I believe Google and YouTube have done. So I've provided the facts, and I've showed you that now that they are even prepared to break the laws to uphold their opinions on climate, what will be next? If they are going to violate somebody's human rights, and they say at the same time that we live in a democracy, what does that tell us, guys, about the point in time at which we're at now, and what the level that these people that commit such acts and break laws are prepared to go to, the levels that they're prepared to go to in order for them to raise $100 trillion for a cause they can do nothing about. Before I end this video, I just want to show you the chart, or I'm going to show you their evidence, or shall we say, their opinion and my opinion, and you tell me which one you think upholds more sense, that is more logic. I just want to ask the question, guys, what do you think is reasonable? Should we use the left-hand chart, which shows a temperature rise from 1880 to the current time, and is that acceptable? Because what they're saying is that is well established science facts. But what I want to ask you the question is it acceptable to measure the temperature from the 1880s to the current time period, and when we look on the right hand map and chart, omit all the temperature information from that point before 1880? I've marked on both of these screens a red line which shows 1880 on both of them, but what their well established scientific facts show, their geniuses, I can't mention his name, remember, is that it rises from 1900s right up to the present day, and it looks frightening. But what they don't show is that on the right hand map or chart we can see that temperature has risen before many times. And what is reasonable? Should we be looking at 300 years of temperature and then make our decisions on that? Or should we look at 2,000 years of temperature and make our decisions on that? Because it clearly shows on the right hand chart a temperature indication of rising and dropping. I want to show you something else. Or isn't it even more unreasonable to look at even further history of temperature, especially when it relates to CO2? What we see here is rises that extend beyond 45,000 years, and the reason why I mention that is because humans was never here then as Homo sapiens like we are now. But we can see that temperature has risen and fallen, and so has CO2 many times before. Is it unreasonable to say, should we extend the history of temperature and CO2 to see what really is the case? Or should we just look at the recent 300 years of the history of this Earth's temperature and base our scientific findings on that? It is wrong by every standard to do what they've done. And you can clearly see what is the motivation of doing what they've done. It is to raise over £100 trillion, which is a absolutely sickening amount of money. You couldn't even comprehend what sort of volume and space you would need to stack that money up. But it would shock you. You could probably put those $100 bills all the way around this earth several times if you lined them up. It's not about the money, it's about the principle. It's about the integrity of science. It's about using our knowledge that we've gained over the years and recording, our findings accurate, and certainly not about cherry picking data in order to steal $100 trillion. You should all be ashamed of yourselves who are involved in this, because this world can't afford to raise $100 trillion on an idea that is not really scientifically supported by any creditable scientist. You've got it wrong. And you can see that in 100,000 years it is difficult to reduce 100 parts per million of CO2. So what do you really expect to do with all the money in the world? With 100 trillion. It's incredible. Are you prepared to infringe on people's human rights? Are you prepared to stamp your feet on democracy? I ask the question, does humanity actually mean anything to these people? We cannot accept this behaviour from any human being on this planet, because if we accept lies today, we'll be accepting lies for another reason tomorrow. And it is that behaviour that they are demonstrating right now that has led to millions and millions of deaths of elderly people, women, children and men. How much more blood is acceptable? We can't let this happen, guys. I think you'll agree we need support now more than ever. The link is down there if you want to help support us. What we need to do is stick together and show them the middle finger. And, drive home that we want to keep our democracy, we want to keep our freedoms. And we're not going to put up with your lies anymore. Guys, the link is down there if you want to help support us. And, I just bid you all a great day today. We will be back. As always, bye for now.